Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Make Believe, where we're playing World End Economica. So, last time, Yoshiharu, our protagonist, escaped from being interrogated by the police by escaping the internet cafe, and here we are. By the way, right after the episode ended, I went to try the buttons and I figured out how to check the background. Middle mouse button. So here we go. Now we'll look at all this scenery whenever a new one shows up. With that being said, let's continue the story. It was a clear day, as it always was. On the other side of the translucent membrane, the visible half of the mist-covered Earth looked small. The sky over the lunar city was wrapped in a see-through dome, and right beyond it was outer space. Gravity was weak on the moon, so you couldn't naturally keep large amount of gases stored up on the surface. Yeah, we talked about the gravity before when he was doing all that parkour. Also, while apparently each 24-hour day on Earth had a morning, afternoon, and night, which was followed the next day by another morning, the moon alternated between 2 weeks, 2 weekdays, and 2 weeknights. Wait, oh, because it stays what it would be 2 weeks day the whole time and then 2 weeks night the whole time? Is that what he means? However, the human body cycle was set differently, thanks to tens of thousands of years of living on Earth. Because most of the people living on the moon were immigrants from Earth, the dome was adjusted to give off light in an Earth-like way. He even had sprinklers attached to it so that it would rain. Oh, so there's like cover? I guess this thing covers and then it makes it darker to simulate night and such. Huh. Interesting. However, I only seen things like downpours and thunderstorms in videos. Yeah, we wouldn't really want to for them to happen, especially since it's not real, so it's not even helping the plants. Well, then again, it's sprinklers, so technically it is raining. Hmm. Oh yeah, there's a difference between rain and a rainstorm, thunderstorm. Which, yeah, we wouldn't want to see any of that. When it rained here, it was always just a drizzle. Strong winds never blew here. The only winds felt here were the slow coiling movement of the atmosphere due to centrifugal and Coriolis forces. Never heard of that force. As well as the gentle breeze of the air inside the dome being mechanically circulated. Everything's mechanically, artificially made here, huh? And there's really no sounds this episode so far. Last episode had at least two good tracks. We'll see if we get any good ones this episode. I strayed from the street onto a grass-covered cliff and jumped upward with a grunt. I kicked off a tree branch and rotated my body to land on the top of the tunnel. This was a box seat where you can look down on the greater part of the city. Oh, oh, here we go. So we're up here looking down at a great portion of the city with the trees on the side. Looks nice. I grabbed some beef jerky out of my bag and bit into it. According to the guys who came from Earth, this wasn't at all close to the real thing, but it's only beef jerky, I knew. There were a number of cities on the moon. The one I lived in was the very first city to be created, and I could get a clear view of the whole thing from here. The spot in front of me where pointed skyscrapers sprung upwards one after the other was called Newton City. Oh, as in Isaac Newton? So is there like Einstein City, Franklin City, and so on? It wasn't like entry here was regulated. However, it had the feel of a special zone where only certain people could enter, since it was full of giant corporate buildings. Even public places like shopping malls and parks were overrun with police and city regulations, as we saw earlier, as he avoided the police. Most wealth here was created in Newton City, and you could find famous tycoons with assets worth 10 billion moles all over the place. Oh yeah, I forgot the currency here is moles. Not sure why the name, but let's go with it. Then again, I don't know the name, why the name of our Earth currencies, why they had those names. If you had that much wealth, you'd undoubtedly be able to be on the forefront when humanity took its next step, which, if I recall, that's his dream, to be in the forefront. Money can make just about any desire you might have in this world come true. Not any, but a good portion of them, yeah. In this world, money ruled all. Basically, like a photograph of the moment a drop of liquid hit a pool of water. A group of skyscrapers stood in the dead center of Newton City, while the buildings around the area were suddenly much shorter. Wow, he's certainly a poet. The area was where middle-class people who worked in Newton City lived in was called Green City, or the White Belt. Wait, is it green or white? Why these two color names? It was a place full of people who loved words like high society and refinement. The kind of people who claimed to care about grace and harmony, but were really full of nothing but pride and obsession with upward mobility. Whenever I went there, I felt sick seeing the sterilized rows of small, nicely manicured lawns and white walled buildings. There wasn't a single piece of garbage on the streets, and the only plants around were domesticated trees on the roadside. That actually sounds nice. After that, the buildings in the area around Green City got taller again, but was a complete jumble. There, power lines dangled messily onto the streets, and vulgar neon signs lit the area, painting the whole place with a squalor? Another word I never heard of. The area was called the Outer Sections, and while technically they all being numbered from 1 to 8, there was no real point. So they made the work of Outer Section 1, Outer Section 2, up to Outer Section 8, but yeah, they're just outer sections. There's no differentiation from 1 through 8. I see. If you consider Newton City the center of everything, the north was full of factories. There you could find silicon dioxide solution factories, fertilizer synthesis factories, automated plantations, and so on. On the east side was the village where I lived. That area was notorious for its hard-nosed residents. You could also find settlements of old-timers whom you might call artisans in the area, which made for a countless number of small workshops. Most people didn't have the luxury of being able to do something like transport wooden furniture via orbital elevator. What's an orbital elevator? Is it like an elevator that doesn't necessarily go up and down, just go kind of like a circular motion? That would be interesting to see. And land was expensive on the moon, so the houses of King City were small. As a result, handmade furniture created with the size and shape of your house in mind was far more popular than ready-made furniture. Then again, since all the houses here are all small, wouldn't the ready-made furniture be focused on making them small? Also, that my parents were aiming to live together with plants brought from Earth in exchange for making furniture out of wood. Even though factory existed, they used the best scientific advances to maximize harvest rate as much as physically possible. They still grew plants by hand for some reason. Yeah, people doing um, handmade and domestic stuff. Crazy, right? Hmm. They seem to at least have their customers, but I didn't see a single enjoyable thing about being covered in dirt. Yeah, just enjoying their work. Some people enjoy other types of work. It's fine. It just made me wonder why they even came to the moon in the first place. It wasn't a place for stuff like that. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be as popular on back on Earth since it was way more common. The moon was supposed to be a place where you directed your gaze to the top of the inorganic buildings that line Newton City. Mm, not sure about that. And if I shifted my eyes to the left, I saw an area haunted by those who couldn't keep up in that struggle. Here, when buildings started rusting, no one would bother to repaint them. It had been nicknamed the Red Valley. So to the east, there's the Green City or White Belt. To the north are the factories. The middle is I forgot what's the center of Newton City called. There's also the outer sections. Okay. The reason it was called a valley was because when Newton City was originally built on a flat crater floor, all the low income earners made the Rocky Mountains surrounding the city their home. And by Rocky Mountains, I don't quite mean something like the harsh mountainous environments you might find on Earth. It was actually close to what you might call highlands. As a result, the rock was chipped away to increase surface area like a river eroding hills, and many structures could be built in a tight area by terracing. Terracing? Yeah, not not really sure what that word is. Terracing the slopes. Furthermore, more space was secured by digging caves into the rocky stretches. So it's clearly evident that doing this over and over made for a mess of a city. So they just tried to fit as much as they could. Not much more than a decade had passed since the city establishment, and it's already become such a devilish haunt that you wouldn't blame the local government if they just threw up their hands and gave up. Too much of a mess. As for me, I like the Red Valley with its level of squalor. There's that word again. Don't really know what that means. While it was true that the people living here could be called outcasts and failures, the place was irresponsible in a good way. That put me at ease. As someone that's been avoiding the cops, you're fit right in. Of course, I had no intention of becoming the 20% that lived there. You sure? Because you sure fit it. And finally, the area around where I was right now was called the 6th outer section. It was not as degenerate as the Red Valley, but was not quite as productive as the east side of town. This area didn't even have a nickname yet. It was just the 6th outer section. And look, lackadaisical aspect used out of every turn. Wow, they're really using tough words that I'm nowhere familiar with. Never heard of them before. While the buildings were dirty and worn out, it was dotted with small companies who dreamed of Newton City and the occasional decent looking house. So it wasn't the worst place to live. Uh, Still no sound, by the way. Pretty just introducing it down, like introducing all the little aspects. I stood up, hopped back down the street, and jogged off. Are we gonna get in music? Oh, let's look at the street. There's something video center here. Sprout? Oh, there's even down here. Pepsi. Except Sprout isn't. Fresh Moon, Fresh Store. And 5 Star, which I have no idea what they sell over here. And the rest is in other language. Probably Japanese, but could be some other one. So yeah. The road was made of neatly shaved limestone rocks. It was chipped and cracked here and there, but no one ever tried to patch it. The rough dirt of the moon had piled up its recesses. Waterways were occasionally visible, and in them you could see clear running water, as well as fish swimming. Oh, wow. I did not expect to be able to see fish swimming. While hydrogen was available on the moon, there was no water. So once hydrogen has been synthesized into water, it was made sure that every drop remained circulating within the dome. The waterway's final destination was a giant water processing plant under Newton City. In other words, everything was designed to gather in the center of the border-shaped city, whether it's people, water, or wealth. Well, that's another profound statement. From there, everything was disseminated outward. After crossing intricate waterways and bridges, I passed through a narrow alley and reached my destination, which is it was called the Lunar Chinese Restaurant. Okay, so are we gonna eat? Are we gonna work there? Probably eat because I believe he was working with stocks. It's run by a Chinese couple with a strong spirit of enterprise who emigrated to the moon. I could sit down here for an early afternoon to whenever and they wouldn't say a word. Or maybe he's just gonna work on stocks here instead of the internet cafe. However, the elderly wife's health had been fading recently, and the woman who sometimes worked at the restaurant in their place was a bit of a pain. Well, I prayed that she wouldn't be there today. It was in vain, especially on an unlucky day already full of policemen and stock losses. Oh, new character. As I opened the frosted glass door, the woman watched the television. And sound, finally, like 15 minutes in or something. As I opened the frost glass door, the woman watching the television place near the ceiling with her head resting her arms, propped up on the counter, lowered her glance listless. Well, was overcome with the urge to just shut the door and go to another store. The woman raised her voice before I got the chance. Table for one. The kitchen was run by the silent, stubborn, elderly husband of the family, so he never showed any sign of affection. Of course, no reply came from the kitchen. Just automatic. Just already used to the work. Even so, it was too late to leave. So I entered the store with a heavy gate. Wow, I'm surprised I don't know that word. Some of the others, sure, they seem complicated, but this one seemed rather simple. Yeah, no idea. Then set up camp in the corner seat. While mountains of hydrocarbons sat at the moon's poles, they still couldn't be used for luxuries such as making plastic. As a result, most of the store equipment was made from either wood or iron. Both could be gathered on the moon and were easily decomposable by microbes when thrown away. An iron cup was placed, I almost said iron club, which would have been a completely different story, I guess. An iron cup was placed with a clank on my tattered wooden table, which was no doubt found in a dump somewhere. Optimistic, I see. The woman, beaming, then poured me water from high up. The water seemed like it should splash out, but it all stayed in the now perfectly filled cup. She's experienced. You showed up, you delinquent. Crab omelette over fried rice. I made my order bluntly, without a proper reply. The woman was about 20 years old and had a bright, silky hair. She had been working here for a while and seemed to know a lot of the customers, so she probably lived in the area. One crab fried. The woman yelled cheerfully towards the kitchen. Then all the things she could have done. She sat down across from me. Except her body was off to the side and her vision was fixed on the TV. She seemed interested in some plot point in the drama she was watching. I heard that actor there is in the air right now. He's going to negotiate his next title and bask in space at the same time. A beautiful actress from around here is accompanying him. I didn't ask, but she informed me anyways. I end up glancing at the screen as I silently took my PC out of my bag. He's a little handsome though. While that might be true, I stifled my urge to reply with a "so what?" as I placed my PC on the table and switched it on. The PC was loaded up with financial information and charts of historical prices for the 4,000 stocks on the Lunar Stock Exchange. Wow, that's a lot of information. In order to make a profit tomorrow, I had to find my next target. There, put in the work so that you can make a profit. Ooh, want to use our power? I raised my glance after being asked a question. and found my eyes meeting the woman's. She had she had beautiful almond-shaped eyes that were even brighter in color than her hair. She must have led an easy life, I thought to myself. Nevertheless, it'd be helpful if I could use the restaurant's electricity. Even if I did decide to go back to the half-assed net cafe, the rates were cheaper at night. The problem was that my battery might not last into that. I suddenly took out my adapter and plugged it into the cord that the woman still seated had lazily dragged my way with her foot. As I hugged the ground in order to plug my adapter into the outlet, the woman mischievously twitched the toes in her sandals. Perv. What? That was what she said to me as I raised my head, but she wasn't even wearing a skirt. I'm sorry, what? Where did the perv comment come from? Naturally, I ignored it and booted up my PC. After that, the woman stopped messing with me, and the only sounds in the restaurant were the filtered voices from the television and the swinging pots in the kitchen. This was a quiet area without much foot traffic, and it felt like the time passed slowly here. The thing that made me go far out of my way to come here, other than the fact that they wouldn't report me to the cops, was this tranquility. What did you eat yesterday? Well, it was pretty tranquil until the woman suddenly asked me a question. Yes, very antisocial, Yoshiharu, I see. What did what I had to eat yesterday have anything to do with you? She's just bringing up some conversation topic, don't worry about it. I ignored her as I stared at my screen, but she wouldn't stop looking at me. Her face, visible from the corner of my eye, didn't make it look like she was particularly interested in the question. But she wouldn't turn away. Defeated, I raised my glass. And at the moment, chagrin. Yeah, because the answer itself wasn't important. It was just starting up a conversation. That's the whole reason she asked that. Pasta. I answered, then turned back to my screen. I updated my data while I was in the cafe, so I searched for any corporate news that might affect the market in the next few days. From where? As I clicked my tongue, the woman's smile, as expected, disappeared. She didn't get mad or stand up, though. That doesn't suit you, you know. She said this so seriously that instead of getting mad, I ended up blushing. She's treating me like a complete child. And how old are you again, Yoshiharu? Just curious. Big Bull Cafe. It was an arrogant name place for a nearly legal operation. You see, bulls were symbols of strong markets. For that reason, there are bronze bulls placed in front of the biggest financial districts in the world, like America's Wall Street or the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Oh, so that's why there's that bronze bull stuff there. I see now. Well, the more you know. So for me, the place was good luck. Huh, so Sarald's handmade pasta. Sarald's? Wasn't there a real skinny guy there? That guy owns the place. I was a little heartbroken at those words. I was sure that he was some loser who worked there by the hour, but to be the owner of a store, big or small, was a fine example of capitalist. Not only that, I was heartbroken to hear that I was eating his pasta. I mean, it was good. So he feels defeated because, like, I cannot believe I ate his food, and it was good at that. Like, he has some good food. I taught him how to make those. The woman beamed with pride. Wait, if she taught him, then where did they know each other from? Don't tell me they used to be lovers. As I dreamed of juicy scenarios in my head, I started vacantly at her face as she turned back to the television. I stared vacantly at her face. Huh. So, was that lunch? Dinner? Huh? Did you eat that for lunch or dinner? I didn't have the slightest idea as to why she was asking for all these details. It was probably because of some stupid made-for-woman horoscope that she watched every day. Wow, just calling the horoscope made for a woman? Yeah, Yoshiharu is a really nice guy, huh? I bet it was something like, if you ask a boy your meat today what and where he ate for each meal yesterday, your lucky color is yellow and your lucky words optimism. What? If you ask? I feel like that first part is an incomplete sentence. But yeah, and he still doesn't get the conversation topic. Dinner. What about lunch? I had set out to click my tongue, but after being told straight faced that it didn't suit me, I ended up holding back. The woman might have noticed this fact, because she was grinning slightly. I answered her after telling her in my mind, shut up. I didn't eat it. Really? This time, I didn't keep myself from clicking my tongue, or from getting angry, for that matter. Why should one should know these things in such detail completely baffled me. And why do you care? Right as I turned the question around on her, a plate of fried rice hit the counter with a thud. The woman stood up and brought the plate over. Then, right as I thought that she was going to place it on the table, she kept the plate in her hand and looked down at me. You really didn't eat anything for lunch? As if to show her that I was trying my hardest not to click my tongue, I started to scrape my upper lip with my teeth. No, I didn't. I don't eat lunch on weekdays. Talk about a diet. What about today? Today is an exception, since I was driven out of the cafe at a weird time. So what? Anyways, give me my food that you're just holding there. Eating a proper lunch was something special to me, since I usually only did it on Sundays, when the Lunar Stock Exchange was closed. Eating lunch on a weekday was rare. What about Saturday? Is Saturday a weekday on the moon? Because he's saying on weekday he doesn't eat it, but he usually only eats on Sunday. Oh, I guess like Japanese culture that has schools on Saturday and stuff, maybe. Saturday is considered a weekday. As I glared at the woman, she heaved a small sigh and placed a plate on the table, completely unperturbed. The smell of the sweet and sour whetted my appetite. My interest shifted from the now strangely annoying woman's question to the fruit in front of me. You need to eat 3 real meals a day. The woman talked to me while standing and staring at me, digging into the fried rice. I just realized we still don't know her name. And eat a little more neatly. Mind your own business, I muttered mentally, as I piled a mound of fried rice and crab omelet on my spoon and shoved it all in my mouth. The woman sighed and then returned listless to her counter-side chair. What a cryptic, stupid woman. And you're a very nice guy, Yoshiharu. I focused on my food, stuffing my stomach with such vigor that I barely had time to even sigh. After filling my stomach with fried rice, I ordered the ayu jelly, a sweet and sour gelatinous dish. It was unusual to see this dessert around here, but was definitely delicious, if a little expensive. Since today was a cursed day, I thought that it might just be the exorcisms I needed. Okay. You got the money, right? The woman doubted me after I made my order, but of course I had enough money to have a regular meal. You could rent a cheap apartment for 400 moons a month, so I could live on my own pretty easily. The reason I actually couldn't was because there weren't any places a minor with no guarantor could rent. I heard that on Earth, people in my situation were sometimes able to make it happen. Unfortunately, lunar cities were only accessible via Orbital Elevator, and so everyone's identity was now. If I went to rent a house, they immediately run my fingerprints and an iris scan, and then contact my parents. Unless you were an extraterrestrial. If you're on the moon, they know who you are and where you came from. Have I ever stiffed you? Just because you paid in the past doesn't mean that you're sure to pay next time. And anyway, you ran away from home, right? You need to take better care of your money. I felt a strange sense of comfort in the fact that her lecture wasn't about my running away itself. And overall, I agree with the idea that people should take care of their money. You don't have to tell me that. Oh, really? The woman shrugged, then carried the eye jelly from the counter where it had just appeared. It was hard to argue with her, since I was, in fact, wasting money here. But I was confident I had more money than anyone else my age. What's more, I never gone on a wild spending spree before. The magic of compound interest made the world go round. If one move today turned to 10 in a year, then 3 years after that, it'd be 10,000. What? Oh, yeah, I guess so. Since it multiplies by 10 per year. Huh. Compared to Compare that to what my dad would make in his entire life, earning roughly the same amount every month from sweating in the fields to grow vegetables. In 5 years, there'd be no way I'd be eating in a lame restaurant like this. That woman might be making fun of me now, but I bet I'd eventually wear a stylish suit and live in a high-rise apartment in Newton City. And of course, I was not going to stop there. That wasn't where my dream ended, it's where it began. You've had some rich actor, you might be able to bask in space on the opposite side of the moon with some beautiful woman by your side. But if you were one of the wealthiest here in this lunar city, you could go even further. You could make all the emotion and desire you feel when you look up at the space come true. Sorry about that. I ate the sweet and sour clump of ayu jelly, and as I looked at my screen to choose a tree that would grow me money, I was immersed in a familiar daydream. This place was the forefront of humanity, a golden city of wealth and prosperity. I'd run through the city gates. I'd outwit the geniuses and prodigies from Earth and take my place there at last. I suddenly got myself worked up during this quiet early afternoon in a Chinese restaurant. I moved my touch mouse back and forth just as I brought up the display for the prominent, even on the moon, investment bank, E.J. Rochberg. Customers enter the store. Uh, I'm not familiar with this. And I don't know if I should stop here for today or if a little further and we'll leave the restaurant. Because if so, that would be a good stopping point, I imagine. Let's try going a little further. I thought it was strange that the customers would come in at this hour and raise my head. At that moment, a feeling ran through my body like an ice cube had just been stuck up my ass. Weird description, but sure. And it seems like we're getting something happening right now. So, oh, there's the cops. Welcome. True, please. Yes, sir. Table for two. Hello? The woman said this in her usual carefree voice, but the words barely entered my ear. I lowered my cap even further over my eyes and hunched over, trying to hide in the reflection of my PC display. Look at their clothes. It was unmistakable. The pair who had just arrived at the table on the other side of the restaurant were police officers on patrol. I'll get the detention done. Same here. Very well. Detention. It seemed like they just chose this place randomly during their patrol. But who likes eating the same restaurant as the cops? Not only that, I think those two were the ones who were at the Big Bowl Cafe, according to my faint memory. The patrol route for the police didn't include going to the cafes, so someone had tipped them off somehow. I was not some sort of invisible man, so someone surely must have seen me hanging around a weird place at a weird time. Wherever that someone was, if they told the police that there was a shady looking kid around, there's only a handful of places they'd search. It was totally possible that those two were looking for me. That might also be the reason that the policeman facing me was glancing at me now and then. But to think that he'd take off and lead us on this wild goose chase. The policeman who was back to me suddenly spoke up. This cop looked at me looking at me, waiting a moment before replying to his partner. Well, it was just some big shot looking at maps all day who decided how wide our area of jurisdiction was to be. There wasn't any public survey system in the area either, but I think that if you were hiding somewhere, it would have been that naturally. The storekeeper was pretty strange looking guy, too. Maybe we should grab him and rough him up a little. Don't judge by appearances. He ended up having a pretty impressive history, didn't he? Yeah, I guess. Maybe I should have studied harder at the academy. I never thought I'd be assigned to the boonies like this. Location has nothing to do with it. You just need to carry out your duties. You're very right about that. So they really were looking for someone. And I feel like I'm messing up the policeman B accent all the time. But the owner, that Seralt guy, had an impressive history. I couldn't even begin to imagine. What do we do after this? We go by the book. We'd start the usual thing with questioning people. His co-worker facing me took a sip of water and went quiet, as if in thought. I got the feeling that he was to take a good hard look at me. In my mind, I was praying that they gave up on the questioning and just went back to their nest. If we're calling for reinforcement, we're just going to get laughed at. Looks like we got no choice. Anyway, our duty is to keep public order. Cracks in the public safety begins in the smallest places. Even if it's just one boy, we can't just let him get away. But one boy, it feels like they really are looking for Yoshiharu. My heart felt like it might jump right out of my mouth. Now there was no mistake. They were tipped off by someone and were looking for me. Lunar cities were nuts about keeping public order. Even the Red Valley, where a suspicious guy wandered the streets, there was not even the faintest trace of any real danger. It was just a degenerate, pleasure-seeking town. Everyone knew just how risky committing an act of physical violence was in a place this small. After all, if you were reported by the oh my god, I just stumbled over that word so much. If you were reported by the residential management court, there would be no question that you'd never be able to come back. The only people exempt from that form of punishment were people who were born on the moon. Weren't you born on the moon? Even then, if you committed a second-degree murder or worse, it was not so certain. Of course, I wouldn't be subject to the penal code just because I ran away from home, but the overall zeal for maintaining public order would mean that I'd be sent back home. After that, I'd probably be forced to report to a local facility every day until I became an adult. While that happened, I'd go further and further away from the front line of the world, and would eventually be swallowed up by the masses. I fixed my dirty eyes on my hand and thought desperately, how should I escape from here? If I grabbed my PC and ran, the plug would get in the way. Do I unplug the adapter from my PC, then take off running with just a unit? My identity could be given away by the adapter, but it was still better than being captured. Or should I stay still right here and wait for them to leave? I like to do that if it's possible, but that officer staring at me seems like he was about to stand up and shout, "Hey, you!" to me at any moment. My cold sweat dripped onto my keyboard, and the heartbeat. Wait, that woman wouldn't have ratted me out, would she? As I thought of this possibility, I was tortured by desperate rage, but suddenly a shadow appeared on the table. It was that woman. More water? She poured me a refill. I cursed her in my heart, wishing that she wouldn't draw their attention towards me at a time like this. My lowered face was totally flushed, but a piece of paper with words written on it was attached to the side of the cup she clunked down the table. Ah, so she was giving him a secret message. Get ready. I nearly raised my head, but the woman quickly left my table before I could make the mistake. I set my computer to mute and shut it down so that they didn't notice that my OS was no longer running. I'll give up on the adapter. I quietly pulled the cord out of the main unit and confirmed the location of my bag. I already used the money I always kept in my jacket pocket at the cafe, so I'll use what I had in my back pocket. There was a line in an old Earth Mafia movie that I saw at home that said that a $10 bill kept in your clothes was a business card to God. It certainly kept you well prepared. Huh. $10 bill kept in your clothes was a business card to God. Interesting. I quietly placed a 10 mule bill by my hand, perked up my ears, and waited for the right timing. The policeman had been staring at me non-stop. He was definitely suspicious of me. With a clank, the policeman started to get up. Tension up. Wow, that was not an old man voice. Let's just ignore that then. At the very moment, the tension down was placed on the counter loudly. Hmm? What's wrong? The cop called out to his partner, who was now halfway out of his seat. Is it the guy behind me? Right after he said this, the woman's voice rang energetically throughout the room. Thanks for waiting. Here's your attention done. Oh, yeah. The one with his back to me turned his attention back to the food. The other one was looking at me, but because the woman was standing next to his corner seat, he was stuck in his seat and couldn't get out. Now was the moment. The woman looked at me. It was my only chance. I put my head over my eyes, closed my PC with my head still down, grabbed it, and then shoved it into my bag. The payment's on the table. I said this as quietly as possible and left the 10 mule bill on the table. Oops. Hey, you, wait! The officer clearly told me stop, but I just gave him a sideways glance as I walked quickly towards the exit. It was only a distance of 3 steps, but it felt like forever. The yelling officer attempted to chase after me, but with the woman his way, he couldn't get out. The shield scream came from the woman, who lost her balance after being pushed by the officer. She turned to the other officer, still sitting in his chair, and the piping hot tension down looked like it was about to spill. Acting out of natural self-defense, the officer caught the bull in his hand. But by that time, I had successfully exited the store. I took off running as if nothing else in the world mattered. Oh, I guess this is where we'll stop. After we ran away from the cop. Actually, we should. I should have saved over this one. I'll use 2 saves, just I guess. And there we go. That's our episode for today. As with Vitz, the Chinese store, meet a waitress, and some cops are on the tail. With that being said, see you next week. Bye.